Welcome. In this video I'm going to be taking a look at this 6-inch bench vise with clamping base. So this is provided to me by the distributor, but they're not compensating me for this video and they're not reviewing it before I post it. If you find this video helpful and you want to purchase one of these, I'll put a link to it in the description, and if you use that link it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost anything extra. So let's get this open. Okay, so here we have some jaws. It's like we have the base here. Well, these look like pads for the clamp. And here's the vise. Now there is some oil on here from shipping, so I'm going to leave that in the bag for now. Let's get this out. So here's the clamp. So this has two clamps on it. Has this thick steel, it looks like 1/4 inch. It's actually a little bit over 1/4 inch thick steel here. And then we have a bunch of bolts. So it has two sets of bolts here. It has short bolts if you're just going to bolt it onto the clamp, and if you're actually going to bolt this to a surface, it has some larger clamps. So let's get a bench to connect this to and we'll mount the clamp. Okay, so I've moved over to my workbench. So I'm going to slide this over the end. Now, this is going to go about 3 1/8 inch in. So if you have a 3 1/8 inch overhang, this will bottom out on here. You don't necessarily need to bottom this out, but that's as far deep as it can go. So I'll slide this over my overhang here. Now I've loosened these up, obviously. And this is a 2-layer thick bench top of MDF. Okay, I think I have that tight. Now it did come with these pads I could put on the clamps, but I don't really need them on this bench. Now one thing I noticed when I was tightening one side down, the other side would get looser. So you want to make sure you tighten them evenly. So if you crank down on one, the other one's going to loosen up. So when I cranked down on them evenly, they had even tension. So now let's get the vise on here. And this weighs a decent amount. So I'll line that up. So I'm going to place a washer on the bolt and I'll thread these in. I'm going to go ahead and wipe some of this oil off of here. So these are 14 millimeter. The thread size on it is M10 1.5. So I'm going to tighten these evenly. So I'll just kind of crisscross around here. Okay, so that's tightened down. So this can rotate around. So it looks like it stops right about here and here. And then it has this lever here to lock it down. So what I could do is actually rotate the whole vise 90 degrees at a time if I want to change that orientation. So part of me wouldn't mind having it 90 degrees to the front, but I also kind of want it 90 degrees to the side. So I may end up changing that later. So this comes with some soft jaws. These are plastic jaws, and these have magnets. These here are aluminum jaws, also with magnets. So to install these, I can just loosen this up, and I'll open it up. And I can place those in there, like so. And now I can clamp down. So loosen that up, let's pull these out. Here are the aluminum jaws. So you have 3 different jaws here. You have aluminum, steel, and plastic. Let's throw the plastic back in there. And this has a number of grooves in it, so you can hold different kinds of rods and pipes and stuff. So this is actually a pipe I was cutting on a recent project. I think that, let's see if that'll fit in there. Yeah, that actually will fit right in there, but that's not how I would want to clamp it. Typically, the way I clamped it previously was in the middle, so it has that little groove. I'll get it lined up in that groove. And this plastic gives a little bit, so now that is clamped really tight. So if I need to cut this with a hacksaw or some other tool, I can clamp that in there, and it's not marring it up because we have these plastic jaws in here. Of course, you can also use the aluminum jaws for the exact same thing. Now inside here, it's curved on both sides, so that can also be used to hold a pipe. So here's some conduit. I can put that in there. And I can clamp that down. Now at this point, these jaws look like they're actually touching, and they might almost be, or they may be, but this is in here very tight, and this would be like 3/4 inch EMT conduit. Now this can be used for wood. This does have the metal jaws. I could put the aluminum jaws in there. Now with a soft wood like this, it would still likely mar it if I clamp too tight. And I could make wooden jaws for this. That wouldn't be a problem. And here I can tighten that wood down. And if I wanted to say cut dovetails or something, I could do it with this. Now a bench vise like this is not the most ideal for doing woodworking, but it can certainly work for certain projects. So let's get some measurements here. This is just under 6 inches. So it'd be 6-inch nominal, but it's probably like a 1/16 inch under. This little pad here is 1 7/8 by a little over 1 1/4. See how far this opens up, although I want to be careful. I don't know if it will come all the way out. Okay, that's almost all the way out. Let's measure that. So that's about 4.5 inches. Now, most people would not use it at that width. I think you could probably get it into like 4 inches, and that would probably be usable. Now, when it's sticking out that far, I'm just holding it here to lift up a little bit. I can easily crank it in without doing that, but just makes it free flow just a little bit easier. So that's the 6-inch bench vise with clamp mount. I think this looks really nice on my bench here. Now with the vise here, it kind of hides that clamp from my eye space, so it almost looks like it's just bolted right to this. But it fits in pretty seamlessly. It's really attached to this bench. If I'm wrenching on this thing, it's going to be moving the bench around. So it has a very firm connection. I like that this comes with the different soft jaws. So you have the plastic and the aluminum. So if you're working with different materials, this is going to protect those materials. It makes it a lot more versatile. A little clamp like this would be nice if you have limited workspace. You can clamp this on when you're working on a project, and then when you're done, you can unclamp it and store it somewhere else. A clamp like this would be great for automotive work, machine work, building, repair. You can also use it for things like woodworking for certain instances. Seems oftentimes I'm using a vise when I want to cut something like a pipe. I'll clamp it in, and then I can have it hold it really steady while I'm doing my cuts. Also, sometimes I'll have like strap metal, and I'll clamp it in there, and I'll bend it over and hammer it against the vise. So I'll say this is not a super duper heavy duty vise, but this seems a lot heavier duty than a lot of the clamp-on vices I've seen in the past. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.